Hey guys, welcome back to a new edition of the Sanditon Chronicles. I am your host Maureen, and we are here joined with my pal Janice. And we are talking our second fan fiction review. Now, this was sent to us by Erica, who is the author of the piece. The title of it is From Endings to New Beginnings. It is on Archive of Our Own, and you will find that link in the podcast description. But remember, if you listened to last week's episode, I encourage you to read ahead. So if you have not done that, now's your chance to read before we get too deep. Her name on Archive of Our Own is Elanor, spelled ELANOR _Danuvio. So let's dig in. So what were some things you liked about it, Janice? Well, let's start. What is it about? Can you summarize it for me?
Yeah, it's about events are taking place about a month after she left Sanditon, although there's some overlap. She goes back and fills in some pieces, which I appreciated, because as you know, from the recaps we did, one of the things that was frustrating to me, it's like, why didn't she go visit Georgiana? Yeah. Why didn't she go, all these things? And so one of the things that Erica or Elanor does in this piece is she sort of fills in those pieces. She has her go and visit with them and with, Mary and Tom. And anyway, so that's helpful. And she recaps some of the things that have happened, in the series at the beginning of her book. And she also, one of the other things I loved about the book, or this story, I don't know if I should describe it as a book, but it's a small book.
Novella.
Yeah, novella. Was she really gave us a lot more background on the Parkers, especially the Parkers, all of the Parkers, so that we have more understanding of some of their motivations and some of the things they've been through. And I really love that about it too. And I like their style of writing, basically. I mean, I felt she was in keeping with the original story.
Yeah.
So those were some of the things I liked.
And I like the vernacular was really, because it was in tune with that time period. And I appreciate that. There was some slips into modern, but I mean, we're modern writers who are trying our best to write what's in our heads for the first time. So, I mean, that's bound to happen. But that was something I did appreciate, was that I could feel like I was in Sanditon when I was reading it at that time. And I appreciated that.
And I felt like the story and where she took it was pretty plausible, whether I liked some of it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very plausible.
And as we were talking before we record this, I do appreciate what she did with Georgiana.
Yes, Georgiana, it really is redeemed in this. She she's definitely more mature. It surprised me some of the ways that the author took the story. She has her staying with Lady Denham, which that was very unexpected to me. But and also in some ways Lady Denham redeemed herself, which I appreciated.
Well, for me, Lady Denham redeemed herself with Esther. So I think Lady Denham will always be like, and plus it's Annie Reid, so
I agree.
Annie Reid is a queen, so I can't, but I think she continued to show that she had changed with Esther, that she had softened a little.
And also she redeemed herself compared to how she treated Georgiana.
Oh yeah, that's
at the luncheon, that was a big change.
Yeah. I will say that as we got into the first chapter of this story, if you're reading Sanditon fan fiction, it's because, or any fan fiction, it's because you've fallen in love with whatever the case may be, with the story, with the show, with the movie, whatever it is, you've fallen in love with it and you're very well aware of what it is. So you need more. And that's why you turn to fan fiction. So I will say that the first chapter is a lot of repetition from the show that's already aired. A lot of chapter 1 is set up to give you information of what happened in there. So there's scenes, there's dialogue, there's character meets where it's just to tell you what happened. So for me, that was a little hard, but I get why she would do that, because if someone came across this and they didn't have as much knowledge as you and I, who have watched it 4,000 times, has, then yes, it might be needed. So I understand why she did it, but for me, as someone who knows Sanditon well, it was a little hard for me to get through that chapter. But I still will say that all through that, the way she wrote was was well done. Like the vernacular she used, the wording she used was well done through there. It was just, it felt repetitive to me because I am coming off a fresh rewatch of it. So
Right. And also, but was thinking about the fact that there's my dog, that there's people like my cousin who was visiting me and saw it because I showed it to her, and she might enjoy this because it would remind her of what she saw and pick up the pieces,
Yeah.
So there's people like that aren't quite as obsessive as we are.
Exactly.
That would appreciate that part of it.
I think too that when Lady Denham offered the spot to Georgiana to live with her, as I continued to read, her living with Lady Denham made sense as I continued to read, and their arrangement felt natural. Well, I don't know if natural is the word, but it felt like it could
Plausible.
be plausible, yeah. But the way she asked it felt like it was a filler scene. So for me, that was a little weird. At first, I was like, this isn't going to work. But then as I read, I was like, oh, look at that. It did work. So just keep reading. If you're in that chapter and you're at that point, keep reading, because the first chapter, she's just trying to help you get in the mindset. She's trying to help you get in the place where they're coming off of. And the other thing too is that even if you're reading Sanditon fan fiction, sometimes you have to get your head in the right space. You could be in the head of, maybe you're on episode 1, maybe you're on episode 6, and that's where you start reading. Your head's going to be at that point in Sanditon. So in going back and explaining everything that happened in the way she did, also puts you in the right mindset. Okay, we're at the wedding. This is the pain that we're at right now with Charlotte and Sydney. So then you can move on. I did like too that she picked off from there, because a lot of fan fiction will pick up already months later. Well, we pick up in this story, we start at Babington's wedding. And I was excited when I saw that, because I want to pick up from there. I want to see the emotions that come out of there and how they dealt with it from the moment it ended forward.
It would be interesting to know if in some of the early, before they did a lot of the rewrites, if they didn't give more time to that whole part of the story, and then it's a matter of time. There wasn't enough time for all that. Like some of the scenes we saw dropped, that were revealed to us after they were dropped.
Yeah.
I do think too, maybe when she wrote it that way in those first chapter or so, it was enabling her to get, as she wrote it, in the right stream of things to remind herself of what was said and set up where she wanted to go.
That's true. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. And I think that the other thing I like about it that I don't see a whole lot, and maybe it's because I haven't read enough fan fiction, and maybe you're watching this, you're listening to this and saying, hey, I wrote it like that. I just didn't read your piece. Sorry. This is the first piece that I really read where it picked up where I wanted to pick up from, but it also, in the interim between the final scene on the cliffs with Sydney and Charlotte and the wedding, we get, I almost said Theo, we get Sydney's point of view there. And I really liked that. I liked seeing his thought process as he approached the carriage. I would have written it a little differently, but I still appreciated what she did. And I liked hearing his thoughts as he went there, because Charlotte, we get everything's from her point of view. So it was nice to get that point of view from Theo too, and see where his head's at.
From Sydney.
Yes. Did I say Theo again? Dang it, Sydney. Yes.
and it's sort of, there was the explanation about how he was returning and he ran into her, and that anyway, why it wasn't entirely just that he showed up to see her. It was obviously that was a big motivation, but there were other things going on, and that he was continuing his responsibility as the guardian, and he hadn't abandoned that, as it were, and then he still needed to deal with that. And so it was, I like the overlap definitely in terms of the fill-in she did.
Yeah, because honestly, that end scene, as painful as it is, it's not as painful if we know there's a good resolution at the end of all of it. So for the fan fiction, we almost want it to start at the wedding where we can fix it and at least bring a new perspective. So it was refreshing to read it from that point. I don't think I've read any other fan fiction that picks up from the wedding and carries it through as long as they do. Like I've read some one-shots from the wedding, but I haven't read like a whole fan fiction that started at the wedding and carried through to another ending.
Right, right.
So that was nice. And I think that she redeemed a lot of characters through this.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
with Mary, like her reaction, when I had my interview with Kate Ashfield, I was like, what was Mary thinking when she did that? And so it always has bugged me a little bit how excited she was that Sydney was marrying Eliza. And while I get the mentality of my family is saved, and that was why she did it, so it makes sense. But in here, after the Sydney meets Charlotte on the cliff tops, he goes back and has tea with Mary, and Mary is sort of redeemed in there, that she is questioning him about Charlotte and trying to poke that bear. And you hear Mary's monologue of why she reacted the way she did, how she reacted, and what she thinks about it, what she hopes for Sydney. So that
Right.
eased even her reaction to what seemed almost a betrayal to Charlotte.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. But I can definitely understand why Kate didn't remember everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
2
she
years
was
prior.
on other projects, and she's not, the actors aren't, most of them, at least, most of the actors and crew that were involved aren't fan fictioning and
Yeah.
just obsessing on the show like we are. I always think about the fact that the people who are involved in the project, the actors and the crew, they remember Sanditon with the addition of all the behind the scenes stuff,
Mhm.
how the physical, how cold it was, how hot it was, how, whatever, how tired they were, that kind of thing. And we're not bothered by that. All we remember is what a wonderful job ended up in the filming of it.
And I always laugh when I did my interviews before season 2 and 3 were filmed, and I would always say, okay, now give me every detail of all of your thoughts from 2 years ago, because and so I knew what I was asking, and so I would always kind of make it sort of a joke about it. But and it is hard to view that way. But I think that to have fans write their pieces to answer those questions, I think is a really fun way to do that. And you guys weren't listening to Janice and I talking about this story beforehand, but I had said to Janice at one point that I don't like that she made me like Eliza a little bit, because Eliza is my most hated person on the show, even above Edward, which I know seems not right, but I don't like Eliza at all. And there was one scene where she was talking about how she felt about Sydney, and it was kind of making it seem like it was Sydney's distance and Sydney being pulled back from after his father's death, and that's the reason she left. And I want her to maintain, no, she's the villain who Sydney was all up in arms, love with her, effusing over her, and she's like, nope, I don't want you, I want money. That's who I want Eliza to be.
Yeah.
But she kept her being unlikable, so I'll take it.
Well, with her approach and her conversation and stuff, but at one point at least we see how she forgave herself for what she did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For calling off, for not waiting for Sydney and going to another man and taking advantage of being with somebody who had all this money. And so it was, but it didn't change who she was in the story and how she behaved.
Yeah, because she still kept Eliza as self-serving as she was in the original Sanditon story, because when Sydney goes, and this is the other thing too, is that people always have different ways, because the end goal is Sidlot. For 90% of us fans, the end goal in our fan fiction is Sidlot. So there's all these different ways that you can break off an engagement, whether it's by trickery or by misleading or threats, whatever. Sydney just went up to her and was like, no, I can't marry you. And I actually appreciate that straightforward approach. And he was a gentleman enough to say, make it seem like you broke it off. And part of me is like, oh, that is such a twist in the knife. It's such a fun manipulation for Sydney to do, because Eliza's already done that to him.
Yeah.
And even in that, she is saying, how could you do this to me? So she's still as unlikable as a human being, because she's complaining about how he could do this to her when that's exactly what she did to him. Granted, they're saying there was no asking the father, there was no explicit, hey, will you marry me? There was no ask. But generally speaking, that's accepted that they were getting married. And so what she did would have been a big to-do, that she left him for someone else.
Especially to him and his family.
Exactly. So for her to be so concerned with how could you do this to me, instead of, oh, wow, this is what it feels like to do that to someone. Yeah. So she kept her as unlikable as she needed to be.
Right.
Well, I wish she was more unlikable, but.
she does share sort of how, like people do, we justify our behavior, and that's what she did in her own mind. And they were very young.
Yeah.
So
don't you try to justify her actions to me. She's a bad person, Janice. That's it. There's no other option.
You want it black and white, unlike life, huh?
Yes, I would like to continue hating her completely. That would be great. And back to Georgiana a little bit, what she did with her, because you and I have talked in all of our recaps about how our hope for Georgiana going forward is she's matured and she's not so spoiled, and she's whiny, she's immature, and we have great hopes for her to be better in the season 2 and 3. And I think that she did a good job, that Erica did a good job showing that. Even in there's one conversation she has with her. Oh, by the way, Georgiana ends up moving in with, we're not going to tell you the whole story because we want you to read it. Georgiana ends up moving Lady Denham, as we said, but she also gets a governess. But she has a conversation with her at one point, asking really honest, humble questions about life, about love, about how you know these things. And I don't think that Georgiana before would have done that. I think she would have just assumed she knew it all. And so we see this side of Georgiana where she's humbled. She's asking advice of people who know better, where she's active. And she's part of the reason that we're not going to tell you exactly how, but she's part of the reason that Sanditon gets saved and that Sydney's able to extract himself from the relationship with Eliza. And to see Georgiana staunchly against Sydney to actually helping Sydney, whether or not that was her goal, that's what she did. It was nice to see that side.
Right. And their relationship improved greatly.
Yeah.
And of course, Charlotte was our ever lovable Charlotte throughout. She's definitely the heroine.
I will say I love that conversation that Sydney and Georgiana had. I love that we hear how she wrote. There's a scene in the very beginning where Sydney and Georgiana are talking about what's going to happen to her from here on out and where she's going to go. And it's when they're discussing in Lady Denham's house. And you hear the inner monologues of both characters, which I appreciate having that written out. And it's easier to do that in books than it is in film, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I liked hearing that, and both of them were so ready for a battle, but they're both being so good about trying not to have a battle. And then when Georgiana responds maturely, I like that Sydney's dialogue is, okay, well, I don't want to entice another argument, so let's see how I can push this. I mean, I'm paraphrasing that, but I like that she added some levity to that, to a very serious conversation. She added something that it makes you giggle. It makes you, if you know the show at all, it's going to make you laugh because he's always poised for an attack. And Charlotte even says, well, I'm usually made aware of not to come in the house and no Sydney's there by the yelling, but I didn't hear that this time. So I went in
and then ran into him.
Yes. So there's those moments that actually made me laugh in there that I appreciated. I think that every good story has a bit of every emotion, and I don't want to say who, because I want you to read this story, but there is a big character death, and it was very sad for me because it's one of my people, and I didn't want him to die. I will maintain, I do not kill him off in this story. This is not my approval for you to kill this person off. Do not do it. Of course, it's already filmed, so what good is that threat? But it did make sense in this story how that pulled everybody together with that death. And I didn't want it to make sense because I love this character so much, but it made sense. But she had me feel sadness. She had me feel angry at Eliza. She had me feel joy when I would laugh at some of those things. And obviously the ending is a Sidlot ending. Spoiler alert, it's Sidlot. And so a good fan fiction allows you to walk through all those things. And I think she did that very well.
Yeah, and it was all very just how everything took place, how people moved from one place to another, the reasoning behind it, all of that was very, very plausible.
Yeah, and that's what I appreciate about it. It wasn't so the reasons for the broken off engagements, the reason for why Charlotte returned, nothing was fantastical.
No.
And I don't some people like that though. I personally don't like reading stories that don't seem like it could actually happen.
Right. Yeah.
I like it to be set in
this one really keeps in character with the series 1.
Yeah.
It really does. It's not, it's very logical the way things happen. And of course, Charlotte is responsible for a great idea that contributes so positively. And, as you would expect, because that's what she did in series one. She was good at coming up with great ideas. And there is a little irony about them, her writing Georgiana to really wanting to improve her art. If you've actually seen what she painted
Yes.
in the first series.
Oh, don't look that up. People do not look that up.
Don't want to know. Yeah. So, but so it's kind of ironic that that's where she goes with it, but it works.
I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right. That just makes it more funny.
Yeah, it's as you know, I like the ironies, and that
Yes, you
definitely
do.
is an irony.
See, there's something for everybody in this.
Yeah.
By the way, I did not, someone told me you don't want to see it. I was like, no, I absolutely do. And they're like, okay, you asked. And they sent me the picture. Like, oh my God, I didn't want to see that. That's terrible. So heed my warning. You don't want to see it.
Yeah, no, because you can't unsee it. It's one of
No.
those things you can't unsee.
It's like burned in my eyelids. But yeah, that's an excellent point. I love that you brought that up. I wonder if she was thinking that when she brought that up.
I don't know. I don't know if she's seen it. You'll have to reach out to her and ask her.
I should. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm making a lot of noise. I'm taking I do tea leaves instead of actual tea. So it's very concentrated now. So taking
And what's your favorite tea?
Well, my friend, actually, I'm going to put her information at the bottom of this because it's really, really good. She does a lot of natural stuff. She makes her own kombucha too and sells it. But she has a tea shop and she has all these really fresh green tea, fruit tea, and black teas. And this one is called lemon tart and it smells like a dessert.
Oh, wow.
It's so good. I'll send you some, but
that sounds good.
It's fantastic. There's not a single tea I've tried of hers that I don't like. They're all really, really fresh. And you can actually, they're not like, you can buy some little tea leaves or it looks like little tiny, like almost like dill weed seasoning pieces. Yeah. They're like big chunks of flowers and the dried fruits. And it's really, really, really fantastic tea.
Oh, that's neat. Good.
Then if you want information on that tea, I'll let you know. Hit me out. It's called Honest and True if you want to search it, but I'm going to put the information on it. I'm going to send you some personally. So don't go buy some. Thank you. But the other thing too is that she does have something for everybody, and I really appreciate that. But Allison, I like what she did with Allison's character from Charlotte's sister. There's one point, and I'm not going to tell you how because I want to entice you, and I'm just going to say that to the whole thing. But Allison has a gun trained on Sydney at one point, and it's amazing. It's towards. Well, I'm not going to tell you where it is. Read the book. But she does, and Allison is a bit more sarcastic, and she's a bit more fun like that, but she's extremely protective. And I really liked seeing that side of Allison too, because obviously we don't get much in the story, or we don't get I feel like we get more from Jane Austen's book than we do in the movie or in the show. But even that is not enough. But Allison has been this character that everyone wants more of. Yeah,
and I think that it will be very satisfied in seasons 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm. I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait for more of that.
But did you see that countdown clock? It's like 75 days or something now.
That's it? Oh, that's exciting. Hey, we're starting to rewatch. Remember, people, if you're on go to our Sanditon Facebook group on the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. January 25th, we are starting a weekly rewatch. We'll have discussion posts in the group, and we'll have fun things in there, games, theories, that sort of stuff. So rewatch starting January 25th. We'll review the 8th episode on March 15th, just in time.
All right.
March 22nd. So that's how we timed it. So get ready, get your questions ready. So let's talk a little of the Sidlot, which is why everyone reads these fan fictions, to get that fix. Let's talk a little of that in the story.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. I mean, she did a really good job of making you feel what they were feeling in terms of when they saw each other and how difficult that was in the beginning. And besides Sidlot, even for the Stringer fans, there's something for you in there too. Is. So there's good conversations, and yeah, it's it's great that, of course, as you've already said, they end up together, but that's kind of known from the beginning, that she was writing a Sidlot story, but you really feel what they're feeling, seeing each other, and yeah, that the old feelings are still there. And, unfortunately, Eliza isn't in too many scenes with Sydney, especially. So that's helpful.
Yeah. And I think that I really like what she did with Sydney's character, because you see a lot of fan fiction where it's really extreme in one direction or the other. And I think she played off because Sydney, when he is, and you can kind of tell in the end of the series, Sydney's going to return to his brooding person, to the brooding man he was before, because he's in pain. And in this story, he has a whole other reason for pain on top of the pain he's already feeling of not being with Charlotte and leaving and being with Eliza. But I think that she does his anguish well. I think that he's not too far in the brooding direction, but he's also not too far in the, I'm going to get above this direction and I'm going to fight. He does anguish well. I think it's realistic how he does it. And I appreciate that so much. She really did a good job, I think, keeping it grounded in reality. So I appreciate what she did with Sydney. And even in the scenes when he's talking with Eliza, I can almost, like the way she wrote that. Janice we were reading a scene together before we started of in chapter, what was it, the end of chapter 10?
10 or 11.
Yeah, I think it was the end of chapter 10. It was a scene between Eliza and Sydney. And the way she wrote it, like I could very, very vividly in my head picture every reaction he was doing, and it fit, because I feel like that really is how Sydney would have reacted in a conversation like that. So I think she really understands the characters. And so that made it more fun to read. It made you want to keep reading because of that. And Charlotte's the same way. Charlotte was as she ever was.
Yes, I agree. And sometimes if you're, I think it's helpful to read it out loud to yourself.
Yeah.
Or to read like we were together, then you can hear those voices more clearly. And I feel the same way about other things, that it's helpful to read out loud. And especially if you're doing proofreading.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes it helps you retain the information a little bit better, because I remember that, of course we just read it, but that scene is really, really in my mind of everything that happened, more than the stuff from chapter 1 and chapter 2. And like, I have a friend, Tiffany, if you're listening to this, I'm going to talk about you for a minute, but she started reading her Bible out loud to herself because it helps her retain what the Bible, like she'll read it not out loud, but she will also read it out loud to herself because it helps her retain what it's saying and get things from it. So there's a real benefit to that.
And that's the benefit of, like an audio Bible, or even books. When you have audio books, I think it helps you, if it's something you really need to retain, then reading along with it is even better. But if you can't, the audio book is still helpful, because it allows you to visualize a little bit better instead of having to follow the words on a page.
And, there are podcasts that do that read one chapter per podcast, and then they'll, all right, stay tuned next week for our next chapter kind of thing. And there's a reason why those work. Yeah,
that's right. You're using more of your senses, and anybody will tell you that does teaching or whatever, that the more ways, that's why it's good to take notes when you're in a class, because, and I found I can take the notes and never even reread them, and it helps me.
I don't ever go back and reread any, like in church or when I'm reading, because that's why I don't do audiobooks when I drive, because I have to also be taking notes, or I also have to be reading along with it. I can't just hear it and have no other context around. I don't do that. I can listen to like people talk, but I can't retain the information if it's just being read to me. I have to have the book in front of me, or I have to be taking notes on whatever it is.
As far as retaining, but if you're just reading, if you're listening to a story just for enjoyment.
Yeah, there is that. I just don't do that very often.
I love audiobooks, especially for long distance driving. If I'm driving by myself or even with somebody, it makes, especially when you drive across Kansas and Colorado, it's very helpful.
It's true. Well, I'm with my cancer treatments here. I have to be in the car for an hour and a half every day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks. And I can't bring my kids with me because they don't allow anyone under 18 or under 16 to be in the cancer center. So I can't bring any of my kids. I'm going to be in a car for an hour and a half 5 days a week for a month and a half. So maybe I'll start doing that. Maybe I'll just pick up some audiobooks and start doing that. We'll see.
You know, I'll tell you some of my favorite audiobooks are, what is the name of that author? This is going to make me nuts. I'll think about it as soon as you lay. But anyway, what I love about his books is that he has enough characters that make it interesting, but not so many that you can't keep track of them.
Yeah.
And that's one problem with some authors on audiobooks, is that if there's too many characters, especially characters that are introduced early and then you don't see them then again until later, that makes it really difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, he writes about lawyers.
Oh, I used to want to be a lawyer. And then my mom said nobody likes lawyers, so I didn't do it.
It's gonna drive me crazy. I can think.
You think about it while we keep talking about this story. We're almost, I don't think we have a whole lot more, but I think the other thing too is that she introduces all the fan favorite characters. Although there was one of my people who were very, very blatantly missing from this show.
Edward.
He was missing.
That's not the one.
No, he's Edward's not my favorite.
No, not favorite, but Edward was missing.
He was missing. Huh? His sister was not in there. Esther wasn't in there.
Diane.
Esther.
Esther was in there?
Where?
You skipped over a bunch, because Esther is definitely in there. She is in there a lot. Go back and reread it.
Does she show up in like the last couple of chapters?
No, she's there early on.
Oh, she's there at the wedding.
Yeah, but no, even past that, she is. When they're in Sanditon, she's and Babington are there, and she has some great conversations with Charlotte and Georgiana.
I didn't think she came back until like chapter 10ish, when they were doing the board, or about to do the board.
No, it's before that. Nope.
I don't know how I missed that.
They were there for the funeral.
Oh yeah, they were there for the funeral. I forgot about that. Okay, well, fine. Esther's in there, but clearly she didn't feature prominently enough for me. See, this is where I didn't read it out loud.
So you go read it out loud.
That's why I didn't read it out loud. I swear I did read this though. I didn't get through all of it. I will admit I had to skim through to the end on some of them because I didn't get to read it before we started recording this. But I am going to go back and read it all. That was one thing when Erica, when she sent me the email to review this for her, she's like, I promise you it's finished. Okay, good. You know what I like?
He goes, yeah, sometime we're gonna have to go back and finish talking about the crows.
Yep, a crow encounter.
Yeah.
But no, I did have to skim. The other thing too is that we started reading this on Wednesday or Tuesday. We decided we were going to review this week. So Janice and I have been trying to cram it in all week, but I have cancer, so I didn't get through it.
In the midst of work and everything else.
Yes, yeah. But that's not to say it's not good, because because I'm a reader who I need to, if something, you'll know this when you read it, but it was around chapter 6 or chapter 5 when I was like, okay, I need to read ahead. I need to find out what's going on here, because I don't like where this is going. So I did read ahead a little bit, and then I had to go back, and then I skimmed all the way to the end. So I'm going to go back and read through. So I did read it, and I'm going to actually read it in full, probably today on my 2-hour bus ride that I have to go for my youth group convention weekend. But I am going to read it, I promise, but it's good.
Yeah.
And Lady Susan and Babington and Georgiana, they all work together to do what we all hope would have been done, what we all wish would have been done, what should have been done in the first place. And I like how they all come back to support Sydney and Charlotte. I like how Babington, this is what I like about what she did with Babington, is because it's why I like him in the show. In the show, Babington is very perceptive of Sydney. And there's that telling scene in episode 8 when they're at the dance, and Babington walks up behind him and looks at him for a minute and says, well, you've been staring at her all night. And then he says, I wish you well. Sydney didn't say a single word, but Babington just kept throwing things at him in response to Sydney. So Babington really, really knows Sydney well in the show. He really is intuitive about him. He knows what he's going through, what he wants, what he desires. There's not a lot of fan fiction that follows that through. This
And
one
it is
did.
in this. It is
Mhm.
definitely in this. I thought of the author,
Okay, who's it?
John Gresham.
Oh, yeah. I've heard a lot of things about him.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of films, but his books on audio are really good.
My dad likes him a lot. But with Babington and Sydney, they have one conversation after they all had a meeting. I think they had a lunch together at Lady Denham's. It was when they found out what Georgiana wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
And the men break off, and Babington is talking with Sydney about Charlotte. And he says it so kindly, but so convictingly of, listen, this is your situation. Why are you being so stupid? He doesn't say it like that, but he's saying that as a friend, and he's not letting Sydney just beg off and get out of it, because she wrote Babington for the reason we all love Babington, because he's a caring, kind, truly good man who cares about the people around him. And that's how she wrote him. And I love that she wrote him like that.
And also I love the fact that she wrote it so that like everybody didn't know everything, you know?
Yep.
Like part of it was like Babington didn't realize the whole debt situation for the Parkers and only learned it later.
Yeah.
And because some fans, including myself, would go, why didn't he go to Babington for money, or whatever? And why didn't Babington offer? Well, he didn't know.
Yeah. Exactly.
You don't know what you don't know.
And even Georgiana had said to Sydney at one point, well, why didn't you ask me? And he said, it wasn't your job. I was your guardian, and I had no right to ask you to do that.
Right.
But so there's a scene when Charlotte or Georgiana is talking to her governess, and she actually held her tongue, because she had, the inner monologue from Georgiana, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, was, I didn't want to talk about their finances because I didn't know who knew what and what I could share, because I wasn't supposed to know.
Right.
So even that shows maturity, that Georgiana didn't let loose. But I think that helped. I think it was important that Georgiana was the one who did know, because she was the one who was actively fighting against Sydney's regarding, because he hurt Charlotte again. But knowing that Georgiana knew that was their financial situation, it would help her to understand why Sydney felt he had to do what he did. But on her end too, it was like, well, I was here, I was a money source. Why didn't you do this? But of course, what she was worth didn't compare to the amount that Tom owed either.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
80,000 is wow, that's a big number even today. So imagine what it was back then.
Oh yeah, I figured out it was about 3 million.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Not quite 3 million, 2.75 million or something like that in modern money.
That's insane. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That makes me a little nauseous.
Yeah,
that's not the chemo talking. That just makes me nauseous.
You can see why he didn't really want to share that information.
Absolutely. The other thing I like too is that, and Janice, you had brought this up before we were recording, but she gives you the background on all the characters. And
yes.
That's that and nonverbal. Those are my sweet spots. Background and nonverbal. Those are my things I like. She even, and Hale's weird there. She even gives some background on the parents. On their parents. And I like that.
Yeah, on the Parkers and what they've been through. It's mostly about the Parkers. It isn't as much about everyone, but
which is a callback to what Jane Austen was originally going to call her story. It was supposed to be about the Parkers, and Erica kind of fulfilled that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think her writing is really good, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't to read it. I think you'd really enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely. And it has something for Stringlot fans. It has something for Sidlot fans. I mean, Stringlot fans, you're not going to be completely pleased, but there's something that you'll like in there. There's Lady Susan. I mean, there's so many good things in it. So I'm looking up right now to see what other pieces she has done, because she made sure to say that this one was finished. So I think she might have ones that are not finished. Oh, she's got several. Okay, so she has The Order of Things, which is not completed. That one is 21 chapters so far, and it's not yet done. Wow.
She has, there's another finished one, A Push in the Right Direction. That one sounds promising. It takes place during the regatta. Ooh. I'm gonna go back and read that one. That one's finished. That's 13. I should have looked at this beforehand, so I'm not so excitable on air. Sanditon Skies is also completed. That's 20 chapters.
Wow, she's really been
yeah.
writing a lot about this.
Next to You, Sanditon Season 2 is a work in progress. It's going to be 34 chapters. She's got 29 finished. She's got a ton. I'm not going to go through all of them here because, I mean, I'm looking at them, but.
Well, I'm happy to read them and talk about them, but I need more lead time.
Yes, for sure. Her one that she's working on, I mean, she's working on a few of them right now, but this one was from, the one we're reading right now is called From Endings to New Beginnings. It's part 1 of her Reimagining Sanditon series. And she's working on part 2 right now, which is New Beginnings. That only has one chapter completed so far, though. So all these works, they can be read as standalone, but she's got a couple series going that you can, the other one is Directions. That was the one I got really excited about, was one series Directions. She doesn't have anything else in that series yet, but it's more is coming. So she has a ton. Go check out her page. It's Archive of Her Own. Elanor Tuviel. I already, shoot, I closed it out, dang it.
T-I-N-U-V-I-E-L.
Elanor Tuviel. And she has some good work. So go ahead, read those. Janice, is there anything else you want to see about Erica's story?
I'm looking forward to rereading it.
Yes.
Because,
and I think I'm going to read those other ones.
Yeah, they sound really interesting. I don't know if I can, I'll have to see if I can find them, but
I'll send you them. Well, if you have the story pulled up, just look on her name. Click on her name and then you can bookmark all her stuff.
It'll link me.
Yeah, it'll bring you right to her page.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll bookmark it.
Okay, so that was our review of From Endings to New Beginnings.
Yes.
Next week, what do we talk? Next week, we are talking Clara Brereton next week.
All right.
And after that, I think we're going to dig into, I think we have one more character dynamic or character relationship dynamic to discuss. And then we're all done with everything I had planned because all the interviews were taken out. So we finished my carefully crafted 1-year plan to talk about Sanditon.
But the good news is we're getting 2 more series.
That's right.
Absolutely. 2 more seasons. So maybe in the not too distant future, you'll actually be able to do some interviews.
Yes, that's what I hope.
And we might have some other people who will tell you about their fan fiction as well.
Yes. So if you we're doing something else now because Janice and we miss our recaps and we like doing the fan fiction, but if you have something else you want Janice and I to talk about, if you want to come on here and talk about it at SandiCon, if you want to come on here and talk to us, if you have a shop or anything that's in the Sanditon world that you want us to review or look at or whatever, let us know. And Janice and I will talk it out. We'll look at it. If you want to come on and talk with us, Janice and I will talk with you.
That'd be wonderful.
It'd be great. So you can reach us at our email of the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. Anything Sanditon related you'd like us to talk about. And we're not going to say yes to everything. We're going to say yes to the things that make sense to talk about, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So reach out to us, ask us, what you want us to talk about. You can find us on our Facebook group under the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. Remember, we are starting a rewatch January 25th. Get your discussion questions ready. Get some posts ready that you can talk about. We're going to take a week on every episode. The exception is on episode 8. Half of that week will be about the episode. The other half will be about what we're about to see within 7 days. And that's going to be exciting. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram under the Sanditon Chronicles. You can search that. You'll find us and you'll see us and we'll chat with you. And on that note, we'll see you in a week. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.